Also going to be up against Ambassador Nikki Haley, and you guys could not be more disagreeable when it comes to our role in the hot spots in the world and the places that matter most. Here's what she told us last hour about how wrong she still thinks you are.
When you talk about Ukraine, I understand that Americans are divided on what we should be doing with Ukraine, but Vivek was completely wrong to say that we have to choose between the border or protecting our national security. We do it all. We do it all to make sure we keep Americans safe.
So she went on there, Taiwan, stop Russia there is a message to China because they're inextricably linked.
So, look, I respect Ambassador Haley and her experiences, but I respectfully disagree with her. And I think the existing foreign policy establishment has gotten it wrong for so long, they're getting it wrong here, too. We are driving Russia further into China's hands.
But they invaded Ukraine, Vivek. They invaded Ukraine. Just give them the 20% of the country?
Well, here's what I would say. Just like Nixon did not trust Mao, we still had to pull Mao Zedong out of the hands of the USSR. I don't trust Putin any more than Putin trusts us.
But you want to take his word that he'll divorce himself from China?
No, I will not take his word. I will make him actually abide by an agreement with the United States with hard conditions attached to it. If they resume joint military exercises with China, there will be consequences in my deal with them. We will immediately then look at other actions that actually put Russia in a tougher spot than they are even now. Maximum pressure campaign. But what I've said is we can actually go the other direction. Reopen economic relations with Russia. Freeze the current lines of control. Make a commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO.
So let Russia take 20% of the country. They took it. They just took it.
The reality,
and you said let them have it?
What do we get in return?
But listen.
The reality is what we get in return. I'm keeping my eye on the prize, Brian. Here's the eye on the prize. The Russia-China alliance is the greatest threat the United States faces. There is not a single candidate in either party who has offered a coherent plan of how to disband that alliance. I have. And I want to use the Ukraine war as a chance to bring that alliance apart. That will be the single greatest advance
We're watching the Russian army deconstructed before our eyes. We're watching the Russian army deconstructed before our eyes without any American blood. They are the aggressors, and our foreign policy did win us the Cold War, which I assume you know.
Yes, in the modern Cold War, Brian, that the old establishment needs to wake up and see is that the USSR doesn't exist anymore, but communist China does. And unlike the USSR, we now depend on communist China for our modern way of life. If that had been a Russian spy balloon flying over half the United States, we would have shot it down in an instant and ratcheted up sanctions. But because it was a Chinese spy balloon, we're scared, so we didn't do it. And the reality is China is bolder because they know Russia is in their camp. Russia does have the largest
You will never separate them.
Why do you want to embolden China even more and allow them to take Taiwan?
You give them a win.
Taiwan? You said that you were fine basically with China taking Taiwan?
That's actually not what I said.
Okay, what did you say?
To the contrary, I'm glad we're having this discussion. What I said is there isn't a single candidate in the Republican Party who's had the courage to say what I've said, which is we will defend Taiwan. Right now, the U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity doesn't allow establishment politicians to say that. The U.S. policy in both parties is a one China policy. I say move beyond that to strategic clarity. I said we will defend Taiwan, at least until we have semiconductor independence in this country, at which point we will reevaluate.
And then we let them take it.
At which point we will reevaluate.
All right.
Brian, I will remind you that the U.S. policy right now is a one China policy. Donald Trump was derided for picking up a phone call from the Taiwanese president. That's how pathetic our current policy is. I think we should be clear that we will defend Taiwan.
Believe it or not, this president,
make it clear to Xi Jinping.
Believe it or not, this president keeps saying we are. He's different from his State Department.
Vivek,